The morning of June 27, 2023, offered no warnings in the exclusive, sun-drenched avenues of Sydney's Bondi Junction. Beneath a luxury residential tower on Spring Street, the atmosphere was quiet, shielded by the concrete security of an underground parking garage. At precisely 8:11 a.m., Alan Moradian sat inside a rented Audi, likely running through the mundane checklist of an upcoming gym session. He had spent months looking over his shoulder, operating under a heavy shroud of justified paranoia. Yet, in this supposedly secure subterranean vault, his guard finally slipped. From the dimly lit corners of the garage, two figures emerged with calculated precision. The glass of the driver's side window shattered instantly, under a hail of 7 projectiles, bringing a sudden fatal end to the reign of one of Australia's most formidable underground figures. The sheer audacity of this daylight tragedy in an affluent neighborhood was enough to dominate headlines. However, the true shockwave that rattled the foundation of the criminal elite had nothing to do with the unfortunate event itself. It was about the identity of the man investigators would soon allege was the architect behind an unfathomable betrayal. To comprehend the magnitude of this alleged deception, we must rewind the clock and examine the psychological tapestry of a partnership that once ruled the city's shadows. The accused orchestrator was none other than Luke Sparos, a man who had proudly stood as the best man at Alan Moradian's wedding. They were not merely business associates passing in the night, they were the closest of confidants, their profound bond forged in the intense, high-stakes arena of the mid-2000s illicit trade. Alan Moradian, known among his peers as a larger-than-life character with an ego that matched his towering ambition, was a man who deeply craved the spotlight. He was notorious for a mouth adorned with gold and a suburban estate lavishly drenched in designer decor, even going so far as to commission a breathtaking replica of the Sistine Chapel ceiling in Guestey, his living room. It was a staggering, permanent monument to his own self-image. But beneath this ostentatious facade lay a highly capable operative, deeply embedded within an elite, international cooperative controlling the nationwide market. Beside this flamboyant figure stood Luke Sparos, an entirely different breed of strategist. Where Moradian sought the glittering gaze of the public eye, Sparos operated with cold, methodical intelligence. He was the quiet thinker, the calculating mind whose formidable abilities extended far beyond street-level logistics. Together, they were the undisputed cornerstones of a sophisticated enterprise known as the Golden Gun Syndicate. Throughout 2005 and 2006, this highly lucrative multi-million-dollar operation successfully moved massive quantities of illicit goods across borders, elevating both men to the very zenith of the underground hierarchy. The Sparos was firmly woven into the fabric of Moradian's family, consistently showering them with extravagant gifts and unwavering loyalty. They were brothers by choice, bound by a shared ambition that seemed entirely unbreakable. But what happens when the very traits that forge an empire, boundless ego and ruthless calculation, suddenly turned inward against each other? The illusion of invincibility surrounding the Golden Gun Syndicate shattered in 2011, when authorities finally dismantled their sprawling network. Both Sparos and Moradian faced the severe consequences of their ambition, receiving substantial prison sentences that stripped away their lavish lifestyles. Sparos was handed up to 15 years behind bars, a stark contrast to his previous untouchable status. Yet, it was during these tense court proceedings that a chillingly prophetic message emerged. An email penned by Moradian's own wife was read into the official record, a stark warning directed at her husband's insatiable need for the spotlight. She cautioned him that his relentless craving for attention and an inflated sense of self-importance were dangerous liabilities. "People like that won't survive," she wrote, a haunting premonition that would eventually echo through the corridors of Sydney's Underworld. Both men served their mandated time, eventually stepping back into society on parole. Authorities allege, however, that the allure of their former lives proved too strong, drawing them back into the complex web of organized enterprises. But the foundational trust that once made them an unstoppable force had irrevocably decayed, replaced by a quiet, simmering tension. By 2022, the Brotherhood was entirely fractured. The catalyst for this catastrophic breakdown was a staggering financial dispute, exceeding $500,000. This immense debt was allegedly tied to an enigmatic crime entity and prominent figures within the syndicate hierarchy. In the ruthless theater of the criminal underworld, currency is secondary to reputation. Neither Moradian nor Sparos possessed the psychological capacity to concede. Backing down was perceived not merely as a loss of funds, but as a fatal display of weakness. This profound intransigence, fueled by deeply entrenched pride, transformed a financial disagreement into a perilous standoff. By June 2023, negotiations had completely disintegrated. According to explosive court documents, Sparos confided in an associate mere weeks before the ultimate tragedy, declaring that Moradian's unchecked ego had sealed his fate, and that the issue required a permanent resolution. Moradian, however, was far from a passive target. Recognizing the severe gravity of the threat, he reportedly initiated his own aggressive countermeasures, placing a bounty on the life of his former best friend. The streets of Sydney became a silent, high-stakes chessboard. Moradian abandoned his ostentatious family home, diving into a shadowy existence of secret safehouses and constantly rotating vehicles. He deployed every conceivable precaution to evade detection. Yet paranoia, no matter how intensely justified, possesses inherent limitations against a methodical adversary. Police allege that Sparos assembled a specialized, highly capable team with a singular, chilling objective: to locate his former partner. The most staggering psychological element of this pursuit involved the very woman whose wedding Sparos had celebrated. Investigators claim his team meticulously followed Moradian's wife Natasha, transforming an intimate family connection into a cold surveillance asset. A tracking unit was allegedly affixed to her luxury Bentley, allowing the hunting party to quietly map the daily movements of an unsuspecting spouse, slowly and deliberately tightening the invisible net around a man who once called him his closest brother. This profound betrayal underscored a chilling truth. The culmination of this exhaustive 3-week covert surveillance operation arrived with devastating precision on that fateful June morning. At 8:11 a.m., as Alan Moradian sat isolated in the driver's seat of his rented Audi within the Spring Street subterranean complex, the trap was finally sprung. 2 unidentified assailants closed the distance, executing their grim task with chilling efficiency. The sudden discharge of 7 projectiles through the vehicle's window left absolutely no margin for survival, instantly concluding the reign of a man who had spent months attempting to outrun his past. When authorities secured the location, they found the victim having tragically lost his life in the driver's seat, the immediate surroundings bearing the undeniable, sterile marks of a highly coordinated professional strike rather than a chaotic street brawl. The operatives responsible for this fatal act did not leave their escape to chance or amateur mistakes. They immediately fled the vicinity in a misappropriated Porsche SUV, seamlessly transitioning to a secondary staging area where a meticulously placed backup getaway vehicle waited in the shadows. In a calculated maneuver designed to obliterate any lingering forensic trace, both luxury automobiles were later discovered, thoroughly incinerated at disparate, remote locations across the city. Investigators would later describe the entire sequence as a dark masterclass in illicit logistics, highlighting the sophisticated deployment of stolen assets, synchronized team maneuvers, and the exhaustive reconnaissance that paved the way for the ambush. Yet, the most deeply unsettling dimension of this entire saga resides not in the physical reality of the tragedy, but in the psychological abyss of what allegedly transpired in the hours and days that followed. Court documents detail explosive police allegations regarding intercepted audio recordings that pulled back the curtain on the syndicate's mindset. In the immediate aftermath of Moradian's sudden demise, Sparos and his inner circle were allegedly captured, engaging in jubilant celebrations. The intercepted audio reportedly features the men singing the upbeat chorus of the Pina Colada song, interspersed with deeply affectionate text messages. Associates were recorded expressing their love and loyalty for one another, treating the permanent removal of a former syndicate brother with the casual, disturbing elation of finalizing a highly profitable corporate merger. The depth of this alleged psychological deception reached its absolute zenith in July of 2023. Amidst the somber atmosphere of Moradian's funeral, Luke Sparos stood shoulder to shoulder with the grieving attendees. He was present to pay his final respects to the very man he was covertly accused of erasing from the chessboard. This was a man who had shared the most intimate milestones of the victim's life, now standing among a weeping crowd. In a display of staggering emotional detachment, Sparos reportedly looked his former friend's widow directly in the eyes, the same woman whose luxury vehicle his team had allegedly tracked, offering his condolences and embracing the family members who still implicitly trusted him. He flawlessly maintained the outward facade of a heartbroken best man, navigating the sea of mourners, while allegedly harboring the darkest of secrets. setting the stage for a massive investigative reckoning. While the grieving widow mourned, New South Wales detectives were meticulously constructing a digital and forensic fortress. To understand the formidable opponent law enforcement faced, one must examine Luke Sparos' astonishing legal history. He possessed a Teflon-like ability to evade the most severe consequences. In 2011, a crucial witness against the Golden Gun Syndicate met a fatal end, and Sparos was accused of orchestrating the hit from his jail cell. After a hung jury, he took the extraordinary step of dismissing his legal counsel. With absolutely no formal legal training, Sparos cross-examined over 20 witnesses, dismantling the prosecution's case so effectively that a jury returned a not guilty verdict in a mere 27 minutes. This chilling intellect was further highlighted by a 2020 incident where a former associate was severely attacked outside his home, greeted by the ominous words, "Remember me from jail." Sparos was charged with the severe assault, further cementing a deeply disturbing pattern, close allies inevitably transforming into targets, with physical conflict serving as the ultimate resolution. Despite this calculated brilliance, the Bondi Junction tragedy would prove to be his most complex unraveling. Detectives bypassed the Underworld's notorious code of silence not through informants, but through undeniable data. They exhaustively analyzed terabytes of CCTV footage, tracked the incinerated luxury getaway vehicles through national databases, and reconstructed a sprawling web of intercepted electronic communications. Piece by piece, an irrefutable narrative emerged, pointing directly to the man who had stood at the altar, beside the deceased. On September 19, 2023, less than 3 months after the brazen daytime ambush, a dawn raid culminated in Sparos' apprehension. He was formally charged with orchestrating the ultimate betrayal. Almost immediately, a strict non-publication order shielded his identity, classifying him only as pseudonym AA. For an extended period, the public remained completely unaware of the high-profile nature of the accused. It required a concentrated legal battle by major media outlets before the Supreme Court finally dissolved the suppression order, allowing the staggering scope of this alleged deception to bathe in the harsh light of public scrutiny. Meanwhile, authorities identified 24-year-old Dut Deng as the alleged principal offender who carried out the fatal act in the subterranean garage. Currently held on remand within the heavily fortified walls of Goulburn Supermax, the former syndicate mastermind prepares for yet another monumental legal battle. The saga of Alan Moradian and Luke Sparos presents a profoundly disturbing portrait of modern criminal enterprise, leaving behind an unanswerable psychological enigma. What truly drives an individual to order the systematic elimination of their closest confidant? Was it merely the staggering $500,000 debt? Or was it the fragile, wounded pride that refused to concede? Perhaps it was a chillingly pragmatic survival instinct, or a darker, unfathomable coldness that allows genuine affection to coexist with ruthless calculation. As the judicial process slowly unfolds, the complete truth may remain forever buried beneath layers of systemic deception and the ironclad silence of those operating outside the law. Let me know your psychological theories down below in the comments. If you appreciate these deep dives into the intricate realities of the Australian underworld, please consider subscribing and liking this video to support the channel. Until next time, stay vigilant.